everybody, good morning and welcome to this episode of MC Commute starring Honda's CBR650R sport bike. Who's ready to ride? This model was updated for the 2024 model year and now includes Honda's e-clutch technology. Now what e-clutch does is it fully automates the cable actuated clutch, so you no longer have to use the clutch if you don't want to. If you do still want to use the manual clutch, you totally can. Here is the mechanism that allows that to happen. Now, it's worth noting that this Honda e-clutch is totally different than Honda's dual clutch transmission. Dual clutch transmission fully automates clutch and shifting. This motorcycle, you still have to shift with the gear shifter on the left side of the bike. Now this bike's powered by a 649cc inline-four engine, water-cooled dual overhead camshafts with a 16-valve cylinder head. This engine is good for right around 80 horsepower and upwards of 40 pound-feet of torque at the business end of that 17-inch rear wheel. We have a 6-speed quick-shaft enabled transmission and this super cool bodywork that looks like the Fireblade SP. We love the new look of this bike. Look how pretty this motorcycle looks. All right, folks, enough talking about this CBR650R. Let's hop on it and see what it's like to ride. This particular model debuted as the 650F for the 2014 model year. We were there. We operated that bike. Fast forward to 2019, and this bike morphed into the CBR650R. Fast forward again to 2025, and here we have this CBR650R that was last updated for last year. Honda fitted this nice color TFT and the e-clutch onto this bike, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now, right away, sitting on this motorcycle, the Ergonomics. Well, this is a comfortable road-going sport bike. So the clip-on style handlebars are nice and high. They're not too forward, not too far back, and generally pretty comfortable. The seat, it's not as high as a typical racy sport bike would be. You can definitely put both of your feet flat on the pavement for this 6-foot-tall rider, and the seat's not really jacked up like it would be on a more track-orientated sport bike. We also like that despite this engine employing an inline-four powertrain configuration with cylinders 1, 2, 3, 4 right there located horizontally, this bike's still very narrow between the rider's legs. Honestly, this bike isn't much wider than a parallel twin powered motorcycle, so good job Honda keeping this bike nice and slim. The seat's okay. It's not the most comfortable seat we've ridden on a sport bike, but it's also not the least. I would say Suzuki does a little bit better job in the actual seat comfort department on these sport bikes, but still the seat is definitely generously padded. It's thicker than you would typically see on a racy sport bike, and there's a good amount of room to move around on front and back if you're a tall rider. Again, we stand 6 foot tall, and I wouldn't say this bike's too small by any means. This is a very comfortable sport bike. Now, this bike's powered by Honda's 649cc liquid-cooled inline-four engine, 16-valve cylinder head, dual overhead camshafts. This engine is actually very old in terms of architecture. I can't remember if this engine is from the 2005 CBR600 or what derivative, but it's definitely not the most current CBR600R powertrain platform, which is still pretty old in a sense. But this engine's a little bit older, and this engine's great. In a world of parallel twins and inline twos, this 4-cylinder engine really stands out. You know, we love 4-cylinder engines because they have a lot of character. They have that high RPM wailing sound that's just awesome. And all that sound and character is in this 649cc engine. You do feel a good amount of engine vibration. That's where this engine and powertrain configuration really shows its age. You can really feel the vibration, especially through the foot pegs. The clip-on style handlebars, not so much. You still feel it, but the foot pegs are really buzzy. It's worth mentioning the foot pegs aren't too high, not too low, and generally this is a very comfortable sport bike, which we like. Now this engine is good for 80 horsepower and just over 40 pound-feet of torque. Here is the e-clutch. Look folks, we can just drive away without having to use the clutch. It's flashing like this because it's showing that we should be in first gear, not second gear. Again, you still have to shift this vehicle manually with the quick shifter enabled electronic quick shifter, which works really well. It's also worth noting that there's a setting inside this display where you can choose the shift speed profile, slow, medium, fast. So you can actually tune that to the way you like your shifting platform to be. Now again, this inline-four engine, God, it's buzzy, but it sounds so awesome. Listen to how cool that thing sounds. Oh geez, I'm really getting carried away with the speeds here. Let's slow her back down to the speed limit, because we always obey all US laws. Back to the engine. Great character. It's got a little bit more torque than a typical 600 Super Sport. Really, no manufacturer really makes those bikes besides Suzuki. And Honda still makes a CBR650R, but they're very limited in numbers. But this inline-four 600, 650 to be exact, has some torque, which is nice. Conversely, it doesn't have the wailing top-end response of a typical 600 Super Sport. Those things were good for right around 90 horsepower, 90, 92 in their heyday, which is 10 more horsepower than this. So a little bit more torque, less horsepower, totally not a bad thing. This engine drinks from a 4.1 gallon fuel tank and delivers right around 44 miles per gallon, 45 miles per gallon. That's what we've gotten on this bike. So pretty good on fuel, which we like. Keeping tabs on everything is this nice color TFT display. We have it set up right now for black background, white fonts, but you can adjust it if you want to have it be the inverse of this. This display is okay, like the speedometer and the swept tack, horizontal swept tack from left to right. Gear shift position's nice too, but Honda has a way of not really getting their user interface the best, and this display to adjust the trip function on this bike is just, you're gonna have to read the manual. That's how difficult it is just to reset the trip B function. So Honda, we've said this for years, can you please upgrade the user interface on this bike? The user interface is the worst amongst all Japanese motorcycle manufacturers. Please do better. Now it's worth mentioning that Honda is debuting its Road Sync app. It's iOS and Android powered Bluetooth app, Bluetooth enabled app for bikes like the 2025 Honda Rebel 1100. I'm sure that's coming to this vehicle soon as well.
What's up everyone? So far so good on a ride on the 2025 Honda CBR650R middleweight sport bike from American Honda, Honda Motor Japan. This bike's really nice. Not only does it look super cool like Honda CBR1000RRR Fireblade SP, it also rides really well. It's comfortable, the ergonomics are nice, and that inline-four sounds super cool. And that E-clutch, you don't even have to use the cable actuated clutch if you don't want to, but then again, if you do, you can. And of course, that slick shifting electronic gear shifter that functions on the upshifts and downshifts. All right, folks, enough with this break. Let's get back on the road.
Now, the full tank of fuel, this motorcycle weighs 466 pounds. Definitely pretty heavy for a middleweight sport bike, but you'd be hard pressed to feel its weight. In typical Honda engineering spirit, the center of gravity on this vehicle is very low and is very apt for direction change. You can tell on this bike the preload on the rear shock's a little low, so if you wanted this bike to steer a little sharper, you could raise the preload on the shock. That would give it a little bit more sharper steering response. But even with its neutral, low in the rear attitude right now, this bike's still pretty nimble for a 466 pound bike. It rides on Showa suspension. We have a single function fork, big piston up front. That means that there is spring in one side of the fork and a dampening cartridge in the other. That reduces weight, but it also reduces performance to a certain extent, in our opinion. But it's a moot point because there's no adjustment anyways. Spring preload and damping is fixed. At the rear end, you have a linkage-powered Showa shock with just spring preload adjustment. But despite it just having fixed damping adjustment, I'd say the damping characteristic on this bike's pretty good. It certainly rides well over the rough stuff, and when you're getting some in a more sporty fashion, this bike still serves up good road holding. It's obviously not going to be as racy as a CBR600R or a YZF-R6. Around the corners, up in the canyons, where we do the bulk of our real vehicle testing, this bike's totally capable. The tires, on the other hand, the OE-fitted Dunlop tires, are a little bit more rudimentary. That's one of the things we'd upgrade immediately on this bike is the tires. Just give it a modern tire. This windscreen's not too tall, not too short. I like the curvature. It makes the bike look really cool. This bike looks awesome, especially in its Grand Prix red colorway. It looks just like a CBR1000RRR Fireblade SP. This E-clutch is so cool. How neat is it that you no longer have to use the manual cable actuated clutch if you don't want to? You can simply twist and go like you're riding a scooter, plus shifting the gears manually. I think that's so neat. What do you folks think? Sound off in the comments. Now, the rear view mirrors on this bike are nice and big. Despite the engine vibrating, the vision is still very clear from the rear view mirrors, which we like. Now, another important change Honda did for the 2024 model year was the fitment of this new switchgear. So we have this new switchgear here, right here, with this multi-function button, which is kind of nice, but realistically it's a little too small, and the tactile feel is a little wonky. We've definitely sampled switchgear on other motorcycles that is superior. I don't know why we didn't use E-clutch there. We should have. Let's give her some beans. Yes! Yes! Oh, I love it! Oh, we're speeding. We better slow down. We started speeding a lot. I just couldn't help myself. The euphoric roar of the inline-four engine was teasing me to break the speed limit. Now, it's worth mentioning that if you do actuate the clutch at higher RPM, it reverts back into automatic operation within a 1 second. At lower speeds, it takes more than a few seconds for it to revert back to automatic operation, so you can still stall this bike. It's really neat what Honda's done. The actual tension of the cable actuated clutch, it has a little bit different feel than a traditional cable spring clutch. It's got immediate tension, and then it loosens up, so it's got just a different feel, so you can tell there's something special in there. But still, if you're a new rider and you have limited left hand clutch strength, pulling strength, this clutch is not too heavy for you to depress the clutch lever with your left hand. It's also not too whippy. Honda went through a stage where they were making their clutch lever pull just so ridiculously easy that there was no tension, there was no weight to it, it just felt cheap. Well, Honda and a lot of other manufacturers have gone away to that, and they've gone to a more well-weighted clutch lever, which we really like. Cruising at highway speeds, 60 miles per hour, we're pulling just south of 5,000 RPM, and we really like that this bike has that authentic inline-four engine character. The ocean of boring parallel twins, this engine stands out just because it's different, which is ironic because in the old days they were all the same inline-four, and now the companies have switched to parallel twins to be different, but now they're all the same, and now Honda stands out as being different. Go figure. Braking. This motorcycle has triple disc hydraulic brakes with independent front and rear ABS. ABS is fixed, always on. You cannot turn it off. Brakes on this bike are nice. They have nice response. They're not too sharp, not too dull, and they have good power slowing down this 466-pound vehicle. Other electronics, we have adjustable combined engine power and throttle modes, Honda selectable torque control, which is Honda speak for traction control, non-IMU powered, and of course we have the electronic quick shifter, which makes for lightning fast shifts. To be fair, it's not the most lightning fast. There's other production motorcycles out there with more slick shifting quick shifters, but it's also not totally dull either, and we really like being able just to grab a gear without having to use the clutch at all.
Well, everyone, that was a really fun ride on a Honda's 2025 CBR650R middleweight sport bike. This bike's really nice, super easy to ride, and it sounds really cool. This 649cc inline-four engine, it really stands out in an ocean of now boring parallel twins. This thing really stands out with this high revving inline-four engine character. And of course, that E-clutch. This E-clutch technology allows you to ride this motorcycle without even having to know how to work a manual clutch. How cool is that? And of course, if you want to work the manual clutch, you always can. Well, folks, that wraps up our official MC Commute of this 2025 CBR650R. We'll see you in the next episode.